welcome to our channel. My name is Lizzie, and for today's video we are getting there. We are wrapping up watching the Nightmare on Elm Street films. So for today's video we are going to be tackling the remake. So I have watched and reviewed this one already. I did it for an About Time review a while back, so make sure you check out that original review. Upon initially watching that film, I actually did enjoy it. It's not as bad as I think people tend to make it out to be. I understand that people really, love this franchise, and when something gets remade, there tends to be hate towards that remake. And this is one that I just kind of thought was unfairly hated. I did probably mention this in that original review, that the trailer for this film is definitely horrible. Like, I don't know who put together that trailer. The initial trailer really makes this movie look bad. And I think that definitely played a part. I think people went into this assuming it was going to be really bad, and when you kind of already have that assumption in your mind, then that can just kind of cross over to your feelings about the film. I didn't have a lot of high expectations initially going into it either, but ended up not really hating it. And it's one of those films, I won't necessarily say I defend it a lot. I don't love the film by any means, but I really don't think it was that bad of a remake. So I'm interested to rewatch this because I have not actually watched it since the first time watching it. So it's going to be interesting to see if it still holds up after watching all of the kind of original franchise and seeing if I still enjoy this one. So I will be back with my thoughts.
I'm having these dreams, and there's this man, and he's burned.
Don't fall asleep.
Never sleep again.
Wake up! Wake up! You have nothing to worry about. This won't hurt one little bit.
Okay, so I just finished with watching the 2010 remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street, and does it still hold up to the way I felt originally watching this? Yeah, for the most part it does. Like I said, I never thought that this was a horrible film. I can understand why people don't like it. There are definitely parts to pick out within the film, which we'll get to. But all in all, I find it still a fairly enjoyable film. I think as far as horror remakes go, it's not the worst by any means. And yeah, I still like it. I still found it enjoyable. So I like the opening scene. I think it has a great opening scene. We are presented with the Dean character, who is played by Gillian Lutz of Twilight fame, and he is set in this restaurant where he's kind of going in and out of the dream throughout, and we are presented with the new version of Freddy. I like his death scene. I like the kills in this. I like the fact that they kind of kept a lot of the original. They remade a lot of the scenes. Obviously, this opening scene is much different than the beginning. We're not started with the Chris character right away. She is introduced, but the Dean character kind of is our first victim in the film. They kept Chris's death the same. It's a little bit cheesier in this one, the way she's kind of flung around the room. is a little over the top, a little dramatic. I don't like it as much as in the original. Also didn't like the fact that they changed the Jesse character's death thing, and that was the other thing. They kind of changed some characters' names around in this film. Like, obviously, Nancy is still Nancy, Chris is still Chris, and I understand, like, you don't want to completely copy the original, and I think that that's a good thing that they didn't, you know, with scene by scene, all the characters weren't exactly the same, but they changed up some character names, like Jesse and Dean. Wasn't really necessary. Like, you could have kind of kept all of that the same, and I think it would have been okay. I don't really know why they made that decision to change them. So in this film, Jesse is Chris's ex-boyfriend. Dean is this guy that she's currently hanging out with. They're all kind of friends and connected, so those little kind of changes are in there. So yeah, they changed the Jesse character's death, so he gets arrested for Chris's murder, just kind of similar thing in the original, and instead of them seeing him being killed in the prison, he is killed while in prison, but we see him being murdered by Freddy kind of on location in the, like, steam room. We do that again, like, always coming back to some sort of steam room. They kept that, and again, I like the fact that they kept some of the original things from the first film. There's like at the end, there's like a stair scene with Nancy. She gets kind of stuck. It's very similar. There's the scene where Jesse there's a scene where the Jesse character climbs through Nancy's window, which I feel like is very like a Wes Craven thing. So I think it was cool that they kind of kept that in there. Almost a little bit of a homage to him and his kind of style, because a lot of his films kind of seem to have a scene like that. Nightmare, Scream, somebody's boyfriend is climbing through a window. So they kept that in, which I think is cool. But I also like the fact that certain things they did change enough for the sake of the film, because again, you don't want to be just like a complete carbon copy. Now, there were things that they changed in this film that I definitely didn't like, and I did post on Twitter and on Instagram kind of asking what some of y'all's like least favorite things or issues that you had with this film were, just to kind of bounce off of for the sake of the video. A big thing, someone said the micro napping in this film, and the fact that they go into this in-depth explanation of it, and that you don't really need that, and I agree. We didn't really need this kind of whole background knowledge of micro napping and explaining why people are dreaming even though they're technically not sleeping. Like, you still could have had the characters just going in and out of this dream state without having to go into all of that explanation. Like, it really wasn't necessary, and I totally agree with that. Another issue that I had within this film, personally for me, is I felt like they jumped way too quickly into talking about Freddy and everything that was going on, because immediately during Dean's funeral, Chris's character starts talking about how it seemed like someone else was there and Dean wasn't just like killing himself, and Nancy immediately like hops into the conversation being like, yeah, like, I believe you, I'm seeing things, yada yada yada. And I know in the original they kind of do that right away as well. Chris's character has her whole opening dream sequence and she tells Nancy and everybody about it, and they're just like, yeah, we're kind of having these dreams too. But this film, it was very quickly like so dramatic. The characters were so dramatic about it. I feel like in the original they kind of slowly led way into it. Like, at first the characters are like, yeah, like, that's kind of weird, like, we're all having these weird dreams. This one, it was just like everything was so dramatic, so intense right away. Was not as big of a fan of that. I feel like they could have led into it a little bit better, kind of taken their time to build up that. But this film is definitely quite dramatic, and I think a bit more so than the original. That leading to one of the, I think most talked about and hated changes in this film. This was the main kind of response I got, and I agree, is the change to Freddy's intent. In the original, Freddy is obviously a child murderer. He's horrible, he's creepy, and in this one he's changed from being a child murderer to a full-on pedophile. Now, I think that in the original, especially throughout the franchise, it's kind of implied. Freddy has some lines that are a little creepy. I think I kind of talked about that in The Dream Child, maybe, that there were some real creepy lines in that one. They stepped it up a level in this one, and I definitely agree that I think it was unnecessary. It was definitely just an attempt to make Freddy even darker and even creepier, and I feel like they could have just kept him as this child murderer, but instead they made him this full-on pedophile who now the parents, same gist, they kill Freddy, but in this one they force the children to kind of forget, which they don't really tackle that very much. I thought that they had initially watching this, but they really don't. They don't go really much into an explanation of how they went about that, which I guess is fine. I think it would have been nicer to have a little bit more information on how they hypnotize them in some way to forget all of this, and so all of them don't think that they all think that they just met in high school, and eventually they all figure out that that doesn't make sense, which leads them to kind of figure out the whole Freddy situation. And yeah, it's definitely creepy. There's definitely some scenes when, at the end, of course, when Nancy has kind of figured out that she was Freddy's main victim. Not only did he have pictures of her, which is just gross, and I feel like another part that they could have kept out, but when they are in the dreamland and she's kind of trying to get Freddy and take him out, he has her basically tied down to this bed, and is caressing her and being creepy, and that scene it was something that I didn't like the first time I watched it, and it's something I definitely don't like now, and I don't think that they needed to include that. It's we get the picture, we get it. He was a pedo, and you didn't have to pile on the creepiness. I feel like that's a big part of where this film went wrong. You could have kept the original themes, or even if you wanted to go this route, you didn't have to just pile it on so fucking much in this film. Poor fucking Nancy. I also, speaking of Freddy himself, not a big fan of the Freddy in this. I think the actor that played him was a perfect choice. I think they did a really good job in casting him. Jackie Earle Haley is a fantastic actor, and I think it's a really good choice if you're going to have somebody other than Robert Englund. I mean, that's just kind of a crime in itself for this, but if you had to replace him, I think he's a great actor to choose. He has a very iconic voice. I think he does a good voice, but his makeup is just lacking. I don't like the way that he looked in this film. And also I felt like he talked a little too much. I kind of mentioned this in reviewing, obviously, the original previous franchise, that in some of the films, Freddy, in Freddy's Dead, I talked about the fact that he had a lot more lines in that one, and I think it was a good thing. I think it helped to make that film really well, but I feel like the original, in comparison to this one has a lot more Freddy in it, and he has a lot more lines. He talks to the characters definitely a lot more, and I was not as big of a fan of it in this one. I don't think that it worked well for the film. I think Freddy's a little bit scarier when he just has a couple lines here and there, especially when the dream sequences are kind of short and he, pops in, says, threatens to kill them, tries to kill them, they wake up, whatever. I feel like it just flows better in the original. I did not like it as much in this one. All in all, I still really enjoyed the film. I think it has a really good cast. I really liked... There were scenes that I really loved, like the high school scene. I think those transitions were really good. I still prefer the transitions from the original. I think that the way it transitions a lot smoother between the dream world and the real world, or awake world. I think in this one, there's too much of a very obvious transition. I talked in my review for the original how much I liked the kind of seemingly seamlessness of walking between worlds where, Nancy maybe is just like going down. There's a scene where she's like going down the stairs and into her basement and it ends up leading into the boiler room. I liked that seamlessness of the original, which they didn't really do here. But some of those dramatic scenes were really cool. Like I said, I like the school scene where Chris is falling asleep and she's like, wake up, and it like poof, and everything's like burnt to a crisp. That was really cool. I liked the scene with Nancy in the pharmacy. I didn't really like that whole kind of pharmacy bit in the beginning where Quinn's going to get the medicine, but it does lead to that really cool scene where Nancy's kind of going in and out between the real world and the dream world with Freddy. It's this back and forth of her like kind of crawling down the aisleway. I actually really liked that scene. I know there's people that don't, but I thought that scene was really cool. I think the cast of this is really great. Like I said, you have Killian Letts, who I think always does a good job. Speaking of the Quinn character, we have Kyle Gallner, I think is how you pronounce his name. I think he's a fantastic horror actor. He's also in Jennifer's Body, as well in the newest Scream film, which I think his scene in that move, which I love his death scene in that. I hated the fact that in this, he fell asleep so quickly in that final scene. Nancy is relying on him to stay awake, which is obviously what Johnny Depp's character does in the original as well. He falls asleep. Quinn had literally just injected himself with adrenaline. There's no reason that he should have been falling asleep at that point. And I like the fact that they used that to wake Nancy up as well, and the way that they bring him back into the real world. I liked how they did kind of all of that. We obviously have Katie Cassidy in this as well, who plays Chris. She's another fantastic actress who's been in a ton of horror stuff as well as nerd stuff. She was in Arrow, which I never really watched Arrow, but I have watched some of The Flash, which she makes appearance in that. She plays Black Canary, which is really cool. So I really like her. I think she's a fantastic actress, and I really liked her as Chris in this as well. And then, of course, I'm going to talk about, and I did talk about this in my original review as well, Rooney Mara is in this. She plays Nancy. She does a fantastic job. She is a fantastic actress. I will not discredit her ability as an actress because I've seen her in other things and really like her as an actress. I think she's really good. The problem with her personally, I have a problem with her personally because when it came to promoting this film and doing this film, she talked a lot of shit on horror and horror fans, which obviously didn't sit well with all of us, and obviously is not great when you're in a horror film and supposed to be promoting it and you're just talking a lot of shit. If you kind of want to know more about it, you can watch my other review. I think I talk more about it in there, or you can just kind of look it up to see what all that she said. But yeah, it's really disappointing that she and maybe her management just saw this as a money grab attempt and a way to kind of get her out there in the scene, because obviously there are a lot of very iconic actors who started in horror, and this could have definitely helped her with that, and it's just disappointing that she felt that way. I don't know if she still feels that way about horror films, because she could be a great horror actress, and it's just very, very disappointing, especially as someone that was taking on an iconic character like Nancy. Like, I think they could have easily had Katie play the iconic character, because she clearly has no problem with playing horror, as she's done it several times. So it's just disappointing to know that an actress playing and taking on this iconic character and doing a really good job of it wasn't enjoying herself, I guess, is the best way to put it. So again, all in all, I enjoyed the film. I still think it's a decent remake, not the worst out there. So let me know what your thoughts are on this film. If there's anything that I didn't address that you want to address down in the comments, definitely do so. Let's talk about it. Let's be respectful of each other's opinions, though. Yeah, just, you know, let me know your thoughts on this one down in the comments below. If you did enjoy this video, please do give it a big old thumbs up. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for more horror-related content. Before I go, a quick shout out to my Patreons. Thank you guys so much for helping to contribute to the channel. If you know the perks to being a Patreon, links are in the description below, along with all of my social media. And I'll see you all again later with another video. Bye.